Hello to all the debt warriors listening, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie Fata. Today's episode will be the conclusion to last month's episode about financial literacy. I'll be joined again by Amy, Marty, Conrad, and Raven Newberry from the National Endowment for Financial Education, also known as NEFE. If you missed part one of our discussion, I'll make sure to link that in the description of this episode. On part one, Amy, Raven, and I discussed an introduction to financial literacy, how COVID has impacted financial literacy, and if Americans want financial education in schools. Today, we'll be continuing our discussion on the importance of financial literacy. Today, Amy, Raven, and I will be discussing the effects of financial education in K-12 schooling, financial socialization, the future of financial education in school, and much more. Now, let's get to my interview with Amy and Raven. Hi, Amy and Raven. Thank you again for joining me for a part two of the importance of financial literacy.
Hi, Katie. It's great to be back.
Yeah. Hi, Katie.
Yeah. So I think we're going to kind of pick up a little bit where we left off. You know, we kind of left off talking about Americans' consensus and what they feel about how financial education is something they want in K-12 schools. So to kind of go about talking about the curriculum for personal finance, what are the national K-12 curriculum standards for personal finance?
Yeah, thank you for this question. The last time we spoke, I mentioned there were not national curriculum, but there were standards. So yeah, the standards were developed by two organizations, the Jumpstart Coalition and then the Council for Economic Education. NEFE was a collaborator on this. Our CEO was on the steering committee, and then actually Amy helped review some of it. So these were put together recently and are organized around 6 topics with standards and learning outcomes for 4th, 8th, and 12th grades. And the topics I think are, earning income, spending, saving, investing, managing credit, and managing risk. So yeah, there's this great set of standards that states or schools or parents who are looking for guidance on what to teach for what age, these standards are where you should go.
Yeah, those are all really important topics to talk about.
Yes, definitely.
I definitely think if you had to pick, those were some of the good main ones. Yeah, Jumpstart Coalition is great. We work with them a lot as well. So they're a great organization.
Yes, they're awesome. They have a wonderful clearinghouse too that has programs and resources. So the standards give you what you should teach, and then you can go there and find resources for both individuals or if you're a teacher, intermediaries of some sort. So really great resource.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure to link them in the description of this podcast so everyone can get more information there if they're wondering.
Awesome.
Yeah, so what are the effects of financial education in K-12 schooling?
Yeah, so we know that students from states that require a financial education course are more likely to display positive financial behaviors, most notably making better borrowing decisions when navigating sort of post-secondary options. And then they report stronger financial confidence. We know confidence is really key when navigating complex situations, feelings of self-efficacy. That can be a great base. So the data is very positive about the effects of a well-done mandate. And when I say well done, I mean things like, is it funded? Was there appropriate teacher preparation? Is there an evaluation metric in place? Just because there's a requirement doesn't mean I think it's necessarily done well. So we definitely look to see if there are those components in place to have that impact and effect.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of talking about the confidence of the young people who are learning about financial education. These young people, they don't have the knowledge of a lot of financial education loans and such, but, they're about to take out student loans for college when they're just leaving high school. So how does this impact their financial future, either them having financial education or versus them not having the financial education?
Clearly there's a huge amount of student loan debt out there. People are carrying a huge debt burden. I think the latest number is something around $1.75 trillion in student loan debt. And, this is a huge obstacle to a lot of other financial choices and financial actions like saving or investing, saving for retirement, buying real estate, even getting married and having children. We have past research that shows that higher debt burden can delay a lot of those life transitions, by several years or more. And so knowledge is part of it, I think we also need to help students understand sort of the pros and cons to the level of loans that they're taking on. Some student loans may help them complete college when they otherwise wouldn't, and then with a degree, they have a higher earning potential. But it's a complicated thing that families are asked to do and to be the CFOs of their own financial lives. So I think for a young person, it's a lot to ask to really understand what they're getting into with the student loans that they do sign on for. And we're asking a lot of families too to navigate this pretty complicated information. I will say, I think we've seen a lot of folks working in higher education and in orientation and financial aid who are really trying to make navigating that process easier for students. But it's really hard on the front end when you're trying to look to where you want to go to school to have all of that information. So it's sort of an ongoing cycle of making decisions every semester, every year for how are you going to fund college, through what sources, how much debt are you comfortable taking on, and what are the upsides and downsides to that debt.
Yeah, and that's a lot for an 18-year-old to even understand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I went to graduate school in my 20s and it was a lot to understand too,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of going back to something we talked about in part one is if your parents have that knowledge, you're kind of a step ahead than someone whose parents don't have that knowledge and, can help guide them for the, people whose parents might not have went to college and don't even have student loans. They might not know how to help their kids.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say that's even compounded by whether or not the parent went to college themselves. So there's the financial education base of comparing loans and making that decision of what college to go to and how to pay for it. And then just even knowing how to navigate the post-secondary system it's opaque and confusing. So yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're asking people to pour a lot and take on a lot of risk really in moving into their next stage of life. Even if it is career, we're asking people to take on their own training and development and personal enrichment. And, I think we all see the value in higher education, but we're putting a lot on individual families to navigate this very complicated system.
Yeah. And I think talking about that next stage of life after students have graduated college and then, they start working, they're now thrust into real life financial decision making. So what impact does high school financial education have on them post college in their real world?
Yeah, so we know, and I think both Amy and I referenced this, so there was a research study out of Montana State University that actually NEFE funded. We fund a lot of scholarly research that showed that students who had a required financial education course did choose lower cost borrowing choices in college. And so that can have huge ripple effects, right? Like not having that student loan burden after graduating, it can allow you to make open up options on what professional careers you follow, where you move, if you don't have that sort of like financial burden from the student loan on you. And I think, again, just having that basis of really stressing the importance of borrowing decision, that's gonna carry through you well past college. But getting through the post-secondary phase without incurring a massive loan debt that is then going to just weigh you down financially is a huge boost and boon for starting your professional life.
Yeah. And when someone starts their professional life too, they want to invest in their retirement, they have savings, but they have the student loans. Do you think if they had the financial education in high school, they'll know how to do both at the same time better?
I think it could certainly help, definitely. And I think being able to make trade-offs of, do I want to put money towards my loans, or do I want to invest, or how to distribute your money, having that financial knowledge and skill can be super helpful. And I feel like I had something else to say, but Amy, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, I would just say, there's the mathematics of it and having the knowledge of like Raven said, navigating the trade-offs between, well, if I'm investing for retirement, am I at least matching what my employer puts in, versus how much am I paying on my student loans? Like all of that math is one thing, and also managing sort of the anxiety and the stuff you're bringing with you in the room, I guess, when you're making those choices. That's also something that hopefully people are looking at for themselves. Like, why did I make this choice? What am I trying to get? What's my ultimate goal? I don't like the good/bad financial decision divide. I think there's pros and cons to taking on debt or not, or going to college or not. There's upsides and downsides, and obviously it's extremely hard and complicated, and we live in a pretty complex financial environment. Even if you're really well educated, it's hard to navigate. But I think financial education, at least that framework of basic knowledge, gives you something to draw upon. It gives you the confidence to go back to the textbook, so to speak, when you are trying to make sense of a lot of complicated options.
Yeah. And I just remembered what thank you, Amy. I just remembered what I was going to say. We have a large cohort of students actually who student loans have been suspended since spring 2020. And so I might be facing, if those, I think that that payment pause is through the end of the summer. Once that is lifted, I think are going to be dealing with some of those complex financial decisions again. And actually people who, have had existing loans and didn't graduate necessarily in that period of time when it was suspended, but it's just going to be very interesting having to face those decisions again. And while things are still having immediate impacts from COVID-19 on economies. So financial education can help navigate that.
Yeah, those are such great points to bring. I just want to just bring up one more thing about this. You guys keep bringing up confidence with financial education. And I think it's true. If someone learns financial education in high school, they'll be more confident to invest after college, as soon as they get their job, do a 401k, because they'll know what that is. I feel like a lot of people still, even I'm 5 years out of college, don't even know about investing or anything yet. So I think the financial education helps and makes it more confident.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think quite frequently this financial education field, knowledge, behavior, and confidence are kind of the big three that we are very interested in. So it's not just what you know, it's not just what you do, but it's how you feel about it. And I think that plays into things like self-efficacy and advocating for yourself, which are also really important skills to navigating the financial world.
Yeah, those are such great points to make. So kind of want to move on to financial socialization. So would you guys be able to explain what is financial socialization and how does it affect financial decision making?
Yeah, we love this question. We love talking about socialization. So financial socialization refers to how an individual's social network teaches them like rules, expectations about finances, which can then contribute to self-beliefs. So this could be like values, attitudes, standards, behaviors, all of that ecosystem contribute to how someone approaches their own finances. So that socialization can come from peers or educators, partners, parents, even media consumption, probably increasingly social media consumption. And depending on where you're getting your information or your norms, that could be really positive or it could be really, really negative. So something we talk about with individuals, like it's always worthwhile to sort of check your current and past networks and considering how it might be affecting your behavior. Like, did you learn anything from your parents that is something you might want to change? Are you feeling affected by seeing your friends' consumption patterns? Things like that all contribute to financial socialization.
Yeah. So you just mentioned all the things that contribute. So social media is a big one. You said, because there are people out there who are giving information that it might not be true and everything. So you just got to always check your source, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I think media literacy and digital literacy also play into financial literacy. Yeah. And I know that's not, the core of what we're talking about today, but like you said, considering the source is really important, and it's harder and harder every day to vet what you're looking at and try and understand like the motivation behind the person giving you that information. So, I mean, NEFE always likes to espouse trying to go to nonprofit sources or, official like. Did the FDIC put out something, for example? And, they're not always as fun or immediate as some of the social media sources. And it's, so like I said, complicated and challenging, but the more digitally literate you are and media savvy you become, and I think this is true for younger people too, it'll help you navigate like the whole giant field of all the financial information that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's same with us with the nonprofit, especially with us with credit counseling and stuff. We always say it might not be the most fun thing, but always try to go to a nonprofit because that's where you're going to get the right information. So why is financial socialization important?
Yeah, I feel like I say this all the time in my work, but personal finance is personal, right? And it's a reflection of an individual's, their values, beliefs, their attitudes, which all of those things are shaped by your network. And we know that research shows that it suggests that parents and caregivers might play the biggest role in setting those factors. But to our points earlier, media has a big impact too. So it's just helpful for anyone to have a better understanding of what is impacting or playing a role in your own financial decision making. Because sometimes it's not, the perfect logical choice. It's emotional and it's personal and it's coming from learned behaviors.
Yeah, we realize it's like it is a lot to ask someone to say, not only are you making a choice with your money, but please do some self-reflection on why you made that choice and how you feel about it. Like that's a lot to put on somebody, but through the exercise of trying to build financial knowledge, we do think it's worthwhile to sort of look back on like, how, what did I see when I grew up? What experiences did I get that taught me how to manage money? I think about my own my own children, like I don't use cash day to day, but that's how I learned about money growing up. So, just reflecting on your personal experiences as you're trying to build knowledge, like doing those things alongside each other can be really helpful. But again, we realize it's like that's a lot to put on somebody to do that sort of reflection exercise. I don't think you can do it every time you go to the grocery store, right?
It's a lot of personal digging.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. I think those are such great points to make. And there is a lot of emotions that come into money and such. So, everyone says you don't want to emotionally spend, but it could be hard sometimes. So
Definitely. I think that's why we see things like financial therapy
mm,
becoming more of a thing. So sort of marrying counseling and the emotional aspect. So we're seeing that as a rising profession. And I think it definitely speaks to the emotional side of money.
yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even know about that, but that's definitely something I feel like a lot of people could find helpful. So I just kind of want to go back to financial education for a second. Is there any current research on whether or not financial education is effective?
Yes. So actually, a recent study came out that just had really solid methodology and was had a lot of rigor. So it looked at over 70 financial education interventions from 30 countries, and they found that financial education does work, improves financial knowledge and financial behaviors. And that behavior piece is the thing that in this space we are always looking for. Like, does this actually translate to changed choices and decision making? So the findings did not suggest that all financial education produced similar results, but it did find on average, financial education was a cost-effective method of increasing knowledge and improving those financial behaviors. So it's just really heartening to see these results over such a rigorous study. But we definitely, still need to have ongoing work to continue to improve and validate the benefits of financial education. And at NEFE, our work is always around championing effective financial education. So we're always refining what that means for different demographics. So yeah, and if anyone who listens to this podcast is like a big data nerd or is into research, NEFE.org, we have all of those. We have that study reference there as well as any other research studies around FinEd. So yeah, that was the big one that came out recently. So we're very excited to see that.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure to link that in the description of this podcast as well.
Yeah,
and of course,
thank you.
NEFE's website and everything. So everyone can get all that information in the link down below. So what are some notable financial education programs out there?
Well, I think we've mentioned the Jumpstart Coalition a few times. And the nice thing about the Jumpstart Coalition is it's this collective partnership of a lot of different providers, but with those national standards is sort of the filter. So their clearinghouse, in order to be included in their clearinghouse, the resources there and the programs there need to pass muster, so to speak, that they align to the standards and that they're high quality. So we love pointing people to the Jumpstart Clearinghouse. I also really like what the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, has put together. They've got a lot of different age-based resources. They update their materials quite frequently. And when we talked about trying to find nonprofit or governmental sources, that's a great one. And then the FDIC as well has a program called Money as You Grow, which is really high quality and is standards aligned. Raven, did you want to cover any that you like?
Yeah, so I think that was a great list. And I just
Mhm.
want to highlight, I think we brought up a few times that we're seeing more and more money management programs or resources offered at colleges and universities. So if you're at a college or university, definitely see if you have a student money management center or if they offer anything like peer counselors. But Stanford has a program called Mind Over Money that I think is really cool. And they've done some really interesting work mirroring sort of like one-on-one counseling with financial education and are just really thoughtful. So we're seeing that just rising generally at the post-secondary space. And then another thing NEFE is really interested in is culturally responsive programs. So personal finance is personal, and part of that is acknowledging, respecting, and centering someone's cultural background. And a program that we recently learned about that I always love to highlight is called the Fly Initiative. It's based out of Rhode Island, and they've really taken an approach of developing like culturally responsive teachers. Most of them have a social work background, and they take a curriculum from another program provider called Next Gen Personal Finance, and then they have those teachers sort of personalize the curriculum for the demographic, and they try to make sure the teachers look like the student or from a similar background. So yeah, there's some really great resources out there. I think like this feels like a lot. Again, Jumpstart Clearinghouse is like the perfect place to go to look for what you're find what you're looking for.
Yeah, all those programs and those curriculums sound like they're definitely going to shape the future of financial education. So, what do you see for the future of financial education in schools?
Yeah, well, there's major momentum happening at the state level across the country for requiring financial education in schools, primarily high school. So I think I mentioned this in part one, but Florida and Georgia actually just passed bills requiring financial education in high schools. Right now, 23 states require personal finance to graduate. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, there's a great resource called Survey of the States from Council for Economic Education. Provides really great overview of what's happening nationally, so you can see what your state is offering and at what level. So yeah, and I think this is really a reflection of state leaders wanting to help their citizenry be ready for shocks. So coming as we've gone through COVID and are still going through COVID, there's so many financial shocks associated with that. And I think states are looking to help fortify their citizenry to manage that. And I think there's also an element of states looking to other states and seeing legislation being passed. And so that creates momentum there. So but even with this momentum, we know that just having policy in place doesn't ensure that it's done well. So I know like NEFE and a lot of other organizations are working really hard to make sure that those requirements are the best that they can be. So and helping as many students as they are. So generally, I guess I would say very positive for the future of financial education in schools. And I think we are trending towards students having access to quality financial education.
Yeah. Do you think that because of COVID, things have been picking up faster about financial education in school, or do you think it will be the same pickup if COVID hasn't happened or anything?
I definitely think COVID was a factor for
Yeah.
sure. I know, yeah, listening to even governors or treasurers are frequently behind sort of like the force behind this happening at the state level or citing COVID as a reason that they were looking to legislation like this. So yeah, I think it's definitely been a turning point. And Amy mentioned, I think last episode we did about the recession being a big impact. And I think COVID's having a similar motivating effect on financial education.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have about the importance of financial literacy. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to share with the listeners or anything?
Raven said this is a pretty exciting time for financial education, definitely from policy level. And I also think that there's a lot of talk around money management every day. And so, we hope that as more people have access, the quality of the information keeps pace, and, we continue to invest in research to see what works and what's helpful to people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was just going to say thank you for doing podcasts like this, and thank you to your listeners who are wanting to learn more about their financial, lives and improve. And I mean, those are huge things that you can do to help yourself. So thank you all around. We love anyone who's championing financial education. We're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And these podcasts and stuff about financial education are great because ours is at least bite-sized, and it gives some great information about different aspects of finance and financial education and credit and everything. So yeah, I love thank you guys again for coming on today for a second episode about financial literacy. Yes, so enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad Amy and Raven were able to join me for a follow-up discussion on the importance of financial literacy. This topic definitely needed a 2-part episode so we could cover all of our bases. If you're learning financial education in school, you'll be more confident about finances and money in the future, and you're more likely to display positive behavior. Learning financial education in school would impact the way students take out student loans. Many young people don't have any knowledge about loans, yet they're about to take out a large loan to go to school. List all the pros and cons of taking out your loans before you make a decision about your future. Social media is a big factor that contributes to financial socialization. If young people aren't learning about finances in school or at home, they might turn to social media to help them learn. Sometimes this can be good, but other times it can be bad. Not all the information out there on social media is correct. You want to make sure you're getting the right information about financial literacy. Nonprofits resources such as NEFE and Navicore Solutions are great places to turn to if you want to know more about certain financial topics. As more and more states are implementing financial education, there could be a day where financial education is a requirement for all schools across the country. Until then, it's important to educate yourself or your children on important financial topics if they're not learning them in schools. Lastly, I want to thank Amy and Raven for joining me on 2 podcast episodes to share their knowledge about the importance of financial literacy. With that being said, that wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Zers, and everyone else listening. Bye.